Good afternoon. Welcome to today's virtual audit committee meeting. Before we start the formal business of the meeting, I must remind you that the audio of this meeting is being live broadcast on the council's website, and the video of the meeting will be published after the meeting. I would like to introduce the officers supporting today's meeting. The councillors in attendance will be introduced shortly. We have Alison Ball, Assistant Director of Finance, Helen Barrington, Director of Organisational Development and Democratic Services, and myself, Alec Dudley, a Service Manager for Democratic Services and Clerk. So, Councillor Collis.
Thank you, Alec. I'm Councillor Collis, Chair of this committee. We also have present the following: Councillor Mary Sis Lawrence, who's Vice Chair, Councillor Liz Clooney, Councillor Boyd Elliott, Councillor Catherine Fox, Councillor Helen Greensmith, and Councillor Jennifer Thomas. There are no absences or substitutions, so I think item 1 on the agenda is now dealt with. Next item is to approve as the correct record minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of June 2020, covered on pages 5 to 7.
Move it.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, please. Thank
Second.
you, Boyd. Right. Any items of accuracy or inaccuracy in it? Nope. Okay. Can we have a vote on this? Anybody abstaining to approve it? Anybody voting against? I presume, therefore, the rest of you are voting in favour. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is the report to Audit Committee on the progress update of IT General Controls of Audit. The purpose is to formally report progress against the high priority actions contained in the IT General Controls Audit Report, and the recommendation is the committee notes the progress in relation to the high priority actions contained in the IT General Controls Audit Report. Anybody got any comments or questions they'd like to ask about this?
Chair, before we take this report, item 3, declarations of interests.
Oh yes,
Sorry, apologies, Chair. I think that's been skipped.
Any declarations of interest? No. Good.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. So, back to the report to the Audit Committee on the IT General Controls Audit. Anybody have any questions or queries about this? Everybody seems to be happy. Right. Can I have them propose the recommendation, please?
Move it.
Second for the recommendation.
Second that.
Councillor Elliott. Okay. Any abstainers? Any voting against? I assume, therefore, the rest of you are in favour. Motion carried, or recommendation carried. Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda. If I can get to it. Everywhere apart from item 5. Oh, there we are. Purposes of the report is to update members of the Audit Committee on the current level of assurance that can be provided against each corporate risk. And the recommendation to the committee is that we note the progress of actions identified within the corporate risk register. Anybody got any questions or comments?
Can I say something, Bob?
Please do. Councillor Clune.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, sorry, I don't know if that's mine, it's very loud, isn't it? Just wanted to ask Alison about the general finance risk and what her opinions are of that at the moment.
Thanks, Jo. Jo, would you like me to do a brief introduction to this report, because there are quite a lot of changes on the risk register this quarter. Would members welcome that?
Yes, please, Alison.
Please do.
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And so, yes, as the Chair says, this is our usual quarterly update on the current level of assurance that can be provided against the Council's 13 corporate risks. You'll recall from the report presented to committee last month, it highlighted the emerging risk of the COVID-19 pandemic, which started during Q4, and SLT have now fully considered the impact of the corporate risk levels, and this is fully reflected in the Q4 report. A lot of positive risk management work has been completed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is highlighted in the report that went to Cabinet on the 18th of June in respect of both the response work and the forward-looking research strategy, which includes a review of the Gedling plan, which is a key part of the Council's governance framework to ensure that document remains fit for purpose. But unsurprisingly, the pandemic presents increased risks to the Council, which is now reflected in the Q4 risk register, and it shows that 3 of our corporate risks are deteriorating. We have one risk that's expected to drop in 2021. A number of other risks, whilst not presenting a change in the overall risk level, are either affected by new actions being required due to COVID or actions that have been delayed due to COVID. So of the 13 corporate risks, 4 of these are now fully controlled. That's a drop of 2 from last quarter, with the remaining 9 that have actions outstanding. So just if I go through a summary of some of the key issues for those key risks that are not fully controlled. First of all, at risk 1, we've got to prevent the budget overheating. I think was the question. One of the questions was related to. So this is actually a green, fully controlled risk at Q4. That's because the budget outturn has now been finalised for last year and was reported to Cabinet last week. And that did present a robust outturn position for the Council, with total reserves at the year end that were higher than estimated by about £500,000. That was mainly due to some the NNZR pool surplus that is being paid over to the Council for economic development projects. But it should be noted that the financial impacts of COVID-19 are expected to be significant next year, or in 2021, I should say this year now, shouldn't I? And at the time of writing the report, there was an estimated net budget pressure of up to 2.8 million after accounting for emergency government funding that we've received of 1.2 million. So I say that was at the time that I wrote that report, but just last week, the government has announced that there will be new funding, which is positive news, but we're still waiting to see what the full details of that are going to be. Have indicated this will not cover 100% of our income losses. So we're probably thinking at the moment that we're probably might need about between £1 million and £1.5 million from reserves, but we will need to confirm that within the next couple of weeks when they get those details out. So I do anticipate that we will see a significant increase in risk level on risk 1 during Q1 of 2021, and mitigation measures are currently being considered by SLT, and will be included in the medium-term plan review that goes to Cabinet in September. So risk 2, which is the failure to maintain financial integrity. So this is the Council's most significant risk issue, and is assessed. And the assessed risk has deteriorated during Q4 from D4 to E4, which is a very high likelihood of occurring with a major impact if it's not managed. So actions during the quarter for this risk confirm that the medium-term financial plan update was completed, including an update of the new target for the efficiency programme, which was approved by Budget Council in March. And at that time, the risk level had not changed. So as we've already discussed under risk 1, the financial impacts relating to COVID, including income reductions, are expected to be significant. And this is the primary reason for this increased risk level. If the government does not cover all of the income losses in full, which it's already indicated that it's not going to, then we will have to use some of our reserves or find other savings to balance the budget. This will have a knock-on impact on achieving a sustainable medium-term financial plan, which is currently predicated on the availability of reserves to support reserve balances to support the budget as we deliver our efficiency programme. So a new action to update the medium-term financial plan has been included as part of the reset strategy. And as I say, that will be going to Cabinet in September. Moving on to risk 3, failure to protect staff, including health and safety issues. There is no change to the assessed risk level here, but a new COVID-related action has been added, and that's for all services to complete COVID-19 secure risk assessments prior to staff moving back into the building when restrictions are lifted and we start to reinstate services, which we have started to do now. So that's just a new action to look out for, but not change the overall risk level. In terms of risk 4, failure to recruit and retain staff, again, no change to risk level, but actions during the quarter include the ongoing implementation of the Agile Working Strategy, which was accelerated due to the implementation of home working in response to COVID restrictions, and that's actually been a positive impact arising from the response work due to the pandemic, and has actually been a really successful piece of work for the council. But the development of the workforce strategy, which is an action here, has been delayed as staff have been diverted in the COVID response. Risk 5, which is failure to properly utilise IT. This is our other red risk at C4. There is no change in that from last quarter, but there has been some further work done. And members will recall that the main reason for the red risk is that the Abritas housing system is not GDR compliant. But during Q4, an agreement was reached with the partners and the software providers for the separation of the database to ensure GDPR compliance going forward. And that work is now being commissioned and should be completed by September of this year. So we should see that risk being fully addressed by September. The completion of the cybersecurity risk assessment has been delayed due to COVID, but internal audit will now work with Helen's team to undertake an advisory cyber risk review, which will help support the conclusion of that risk assessment. So hopefully we'll start to see some work being completed on that. Risk 6, 7 and 8 are all amber risks, and there are no major changes on those, so I don't propose no major impact from COVID, so I won't go into any more details on those. In respect of risk 10, failure to maintain service standards, due to COVID-19, the risk levels deteriorated, moving from fully controlled a green risk to amber, so that's a significant impact with significant likelihood. COVID-19 resulted in a number of service closures and suspensions in Q4, as you're all aware, due to the government-imposed restrictions, and the uncertainty of available staffing levels due to sickness and shielding and the prioritisation of critical services. The consequence is a possible adverse impact on service standards and customer satisfaction, and that's why we see the deterioration in the risk level here. Improvements in the risk level are expected as service levels return to normal, but could be impacted by a second outbreak of COVID-19. So we will keep this one being monitored, but it's not expected to continue as a risk in the longer term. Just finally, risk 12, failure to react to an environmental incident. So due to COVID-19, again, the risk level has deteriorated, moving from fully controlled V3, which is a serious impact, low likelihood, so not a significant escalation. But this was really more, I suppose, due to the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that there were some gaps in the existing business continuity plans. So really, this was more that our previous assessed risk level was not quite right. So we're now reflecting this here. But what I can tell you is that the new business continuity impact assessment template was adopted, and business continuity plans were completed by all service areas to address COVID-19 risks. And Cabinet did actually approve last week, a new business continuity policy and the business continuity impact assessment guidance. So service managers will continue to work on reviewing their business continuity plans in accordance with this new guidance to ensure that we have a full suite of plans covering all risk events, and that's planned to be completed by September 2020. So that was three is just to cover off the key changes for us, because we have had quite a significant change in the risk register during Q4. So I'll take any questions if that's not answered then for you.
Any questions, anyone?
Meredith?
Yes, thank you. Not really a question. I was going to move that we note the report, the progress made in the report, and that also that we thank the officers for the improvements that have been made at this particular time.
I would go along with that, Meredith. It's a very difficult time for all officers. I would like to ask, I know it's not hit us yet, but the effects of Brexit, are we making any plans on that?
Well, Brexit, we've got a watching brief on Brexit, so we are aware. I mean, it is an outstanding action in the risk register. So we do know that at the moment we're in the transition period for Brexit, and that's due to end on the 31st of December. So that what we don't know yet is what the outcome of any trade deal will be, or whether we'll get a trade deal. So the uncertainties around the impact of that on the economy going forward. So it's a watching brief on that one at the moment. So
we're not planning for the worst and hoping for the best.
Well, I suppose we have to plan for the worst. That's what we do to make sure that we are managing our risks well, but it's about a realistic assessment of those risks. We can't eliminate all risks, so we manage them as best we can. It's not, Brexit is something that is so uncertain at the moment that until we know what that trade deal will be and what some of those new regulations will be, at that point we'll be able to make a full assessment for the risk register. Okay, thank you, Alison.
Right. Anybody else got any questions? Liz, did you have your hand up just now? No? Okay. Right, Meredith has made the proposal that the recommendations be approved. Can I have a seconder, please?
Helen Greensmith.
Yeah.
Thank you. All those abstaining, please indicate. Any who wish to vote against, please indicate. I'm assuming, therefore, it's passed. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6, the annual governance statement. Over to you, Alison, to lead on this.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report presents a draft annual governance statement and asks members to provide any comments for inclusion in the final version prior to sign-off of the statement, which for the sign-off was actually done by the leader of the council and the chief executive, and it will be included as an accompanying statement to the council's statement of accounts, which will be presented to this committee for approval in November. As you're all aware, and by way of background, the council is responsible for ensuring that its business is conducted in accordance with the law and public standards, and that public money is safeguarded and properly accounted for, and that value for money is secured. It also has a duty to secure continuous improvement in the way its functions are exercised, and the annual review of governance in the annual governance statement enables that by reviewing the effectiveness of governance arrangements and identifying any improvement actions to be completed. The council has an approved local code of corporate governance, which is prepared in accordance with the 7 core principles held in the Fit for Solace framework, delivering good governance in local government. And as detailed in paragraph 3.1 of the annual governance statement, the 2019-20 code was considered by the committee on the 19th of March 2019, and this sets out how the council demonstrates that its governance structures comply with the 7 core principles. A report of the council's monitoring officer for the review and approval of any amendments to the local code for 2021 was considered and approved by this committee last month. So you'll recall reviewing that. So the local code of corporate governance summarises the framework, and through its effective implementation and a required annual review of the framework, we can demonstrate and provide assurance for the effectiveness of the systems of internal control and the management of risk to ensure that the achievement of sustainable outcomes through the delivery of the council's Gedling plan. And that includes assurance from executive managers. So this is assessed through the completion of a checklist that requires assurance that services are operating in compliance with the council's policies and procedures and with the internal control and governance assurance framework. I can confirm too that each service manager did provide a positive assurance, and throughout the year a small number of issues were raised regarding non-compliance with contract standing orders and financial regulations, but these were relatively small in number, relatively minor. But what we have agreed is that we'll introduce a new process for recording such events and targeting training for officers so that we can reduce the number of those non-compliance issues. So the other 2 aspects of assurance that we can take, the first one is from external audit. So you'll see in there that the value for money conclusion for 2018-19 determined that the external auditor was satisfied with that in all respects. And then we take the insurance from internal audit, and this is provided by the head of internal audit, which for last year was RSM, and their annual audit opinion was included and considered by this committee in June. So they did conclude that for the 12 months ended the 31st of March, that the organisation has adequate and effective framework for risk management, governance and internal control. They did identify some further enhancements to the framework. That's absolutely usual. You will see those from the recommendations within the internal audit reports. So as long as we continue to implement those actions, then the framework will continue to remain adequate and effective. Internal audit did also last year complete both a governance review, an internal audit of our governance procedures and of our risk management processes, and both of those internal audits received a substantial assurance. So the conclusion really is from that annual review of effectiveness that they did not highlight any significant governance issues arising during 2019-20. Members can be assured that those arrangements are working effectively. However, we must also consider the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our governance arrangements. So we've already talked a lot about this, and our annual governance statement actually assesses governance in place during 2019-20, and so for the majority of the year, our governance was unaffected by the impact of COVID-19. But because COVID-19 is expected to have a major impact in 2021, so the implications of this are included in the governance statement. A full report on the council's response to COVID-19 was considered by Cabinet, as we've already discussed, and there was within that it did demonstrate the effectiveness of the governance arrangements that were put in place during the response phase. So the key actions are detailed in paragraph 7.2 of the AGS, and these cover the arrangements for the council's decision making and meetings, the immediate impact on service delivery and its management through business continuity planning, and the future financial issues and service impacts that the council will need to address. And included in the governance statement are the actions that paragraph 7.3 that relate to COVID-19. So as we've already discussed under the last agenda item, in terms of financial impacts, the draft AGS does highlight the significant financial and economic impacts arising from COVID-19 and details the potential budget impacts, which is why there's a review of the medium-term plan included within the annual governance statement action plans. So the AGS will be actually updated with the latest position on any financial impacts before the leader and the chief executive are asked to sign this off. So by the time you see it in November as an accompanying statement to the statement of accounts, you will see those aspects of it being updated in terms of what the financial consequences are likely to be. So the full set of action plans are listed in the report. There is a review of the achievements against last year's action plan at 7.3.1, with 2 of those actions fully completed and 3 of them still ongoing and now due to be completed during 2021. And that includes a review of the constitution, officer training and governance arrangements for potential housing development delivery options. So in conclusion, the review of effectiveness of the 1920 governance framework raised no significant weaknesses in financial controls or governance arrangements, but COVID-19 raises some actions that, whilst not materially affecting 1920, are highlighted as concerns to be addressed in 2021. And I'll take any questions there. The recommendations are on page 27.
Thank you, Alison. Yes, Meredith.
Yeah, again, not a comment or a question, just to move that we note the annual government statement, especially the comments of the internal and external auditors, and we note the progress that's being taken on the internal auditors report.
Thank you, Mary. Has anybody got any questions? A very satisfied lot by the sound of it. Right, can I have a seconder to Meredith's proposal?
I'll second. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Right, I'll go through the procedure again. Those who wish to abstain, please indicate. Those who wish to vote against. I'm assuming, therefore, that everybody else is happy with the recommendation and are prepared to approve them. Thank you, everybody. I've not been notified of any items which I consider important. I've not been notified of any items. I would like to reiterate what Meredith said just now. A big thank you to all the officers at all levels for the work they've been doing in very, very difficult time, and it is not going to get a lot easier in the foreseeable future. So a big thanks to all the staff at all levels. I hope all of you will endorse that.
Yes, absolutely.
Bye.
Yes, right, and that's it. I think, everybody, let's call the meeting to a close. That's not bad.